I dropped out of school, I had $3,000, maybe $5,000 in my bank account. And so there's no way I'm gonna be able to afford to get there, but then how can I at least get in the room?
All right, welcome to Dream, Think, Do. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this conversation. I have to have notes here because if I didn't, this introduction alone would be an hour. But I am bringing back a great friend and one of the most inspiring, amazing people that I know, Chandler Bolt. Do you realize this is your 5th time on Dream, Think, Do?
Wow.
There's only one other person that's done that, and that's Mr. Adam Carroll. Come on,
nice,
right?
That's good company.
I know, right? Exactly. So if you don't remember Chandler from one of the many other Dream, Think, Do's, it's been a couple of years though, and a lot has happened since you've been on Dream, Think, Do. So I'm so glad that you're back. Chandler is one of the most amazing humans I know. He's an incredible entrepreneur. Seriously, I have to look back at my notes here because it's like so robust. He is the founder and CEO of selfpublishing.com, which has literally helped thousands of authors to bring their books to life. We are actually here recording this in Chandler's studio in Austin, Texas, which is absolutely amazing and an honor. But I bring that up because I'm actually able to see him interact with his team, see all the amazing vibe that's happening around here. And it is incredible. You can tell that these people are on a mission to help people to get their stories and their strategies out to a world that desperately need it. And they've had impact on millions of people through their authors and helping those authors make these books and bring these books to life. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, so now Chandler has done some amazing things, built this company. They're impacting the globe. They're driving revenue. It's absolutely amazing. He's been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, and Entrepreneur Magazine of many others. He also has 7 best-selling books of his own. 7? Come on, man, right? Like absolutely amazing. And his most recent is published. So if you don't have a copy of that, you need to get a copy of that. We'll put it in the show notes. He's got a TED Talk that's killing it, showing people how to launch a book in 90 days in real tactical ways. It's one of those viral TED Talks because it's so freaking good. And I'll tell you what, we are going to be talking about how Chandler has not only built a business, but a life that encapsulates everything that we talk about with dreaming bigger, thinking better, and doing more. So I am so glad to get to come back to having a conversation, talking about what's going on, but also talk about some of the ways that you've made this happen. So thanks for making the time, dude.
It's great having you in the office, in the studio. Is this the first ever in-person interview for Dream, Think, Do?
You know what? That's a good question. I think it might be. How about that? It's a series of firsts. It's also my first to Austin, which is freaking amazing. I went downtown yesterday. We got to hang out at an amazing restaurant, got to spend time with your amazing wife, see your beautiful home, all that stuff. This is freaking amazing.
Well, I always tell people Austin sucks and you shouldn't move here.
That's right. Stay away. But if you've been here, you know that's not true. So I love it. I love it. So my challenge with somebody like you is we could literally talk for a full day and not cover everything that I want to cover with you. So the challenge with somebody like you is to say, all right, where do we even begin? How do we focus? And as I was thinking about this episode and as I was praying about this episode, 4 words came to mind. And that was friends, mentors, peers, and team. And the reason why, as I thought back through those 4 words, is you are somebody that's navigated those 4 things with more intention than just about anybody that I know. And I know a lot of people, my man. So I was like, you know what? I want to dive into those things because when I think about those things, those are 4 things that you have really leaned on and been intentional about to really build a business, but also a life that you were put on the planet to walk out. And so that's where I want to go. Again, I always say that I know where I want to start. And I know where I have an idea of where I want to stop. And I've got a map, but we're driving a Jeep. So we'll start and then we'll see where we go. But let's talk about that because I know for a lot of Dream Think Doers, they are wanting to do big things, right? But they're like, all right, give me the toolbox, give me the tactics. And there's a lot of different dreams. Just as many listeners there's that many dreams. But you've been intentional with these 4 things. Let's start with friends, because this started at an early age for you. Like, you were weird, and somehow you seemed to really gather a number of other weird people around some shared dreams. Like, you started out as an entrepreneur early on. Talk to us a little bit about like how you got so intentional. Have you always been intentional with your friend group, or was this something that like a switch flipped for you to say, you know what, this is important?
That's a great question. I think probably not super intentional early on, but I think my parents were intentional for me, which is a really blessing, which was a blessing in disguise. But I think if we zoom out a little bit and we think about these 4 core pillars, right? The thing that they all have in common is a quote that you know well, is Jim Rohn says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So whether it's in the friendship bucket, whether it's in the peer bucket, the mentorship bucket, or the team that I'm building with the company, which will obviously break them down one by one, but who are you spending time with? And if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Yeah. And so I think when it comes to friendship specifically, early in my life, my parents were intentional about that they just did a couple things. One was that my parents, and I know you've got the same exact philosophy, they said, well, we want your friends to come over to our house, because if you come over to our house, we at least know what you're doing.
Yep.
And so that was the first big thing. And my mom always talked about how it was a lot more work. You know, you're cleaning up, you're cooking for all these people, but you at least know the container and the environment. Yep. And then there was just kind of another rule of like, hey, you've got this curfew, or you've got these certain set of restrictions, but if you're hanging out with people from the church, that loosens a bit. So it's kind of like, do we know who you're hanging out with? And are you hanging out with and surrounding yourself with good people? And then we got to know the parents of the people you're going over to their house, and we got to figure out what's going on, because we know how we raise our kids, and we don't know if that's aligned. So we need to talk to and know these parents of the places that you're going to. So I think those are kind of 3 core pillars that were decided for me.
I love that. So, but I'm going to interrupt you because what I love about that is we were the same way as far as our boys are grown and out of the house now, but there is a fridge in our basement that was always stocked with pop and water and whatever, and all their friends knew it. There was a fridge. There was pop. Yeah, I'm right, like in the Midwest, right? But like there was a fridge or a freezer in our garage. Everybody knew unlimited frozen pizzas. They knew how to use our oven. So, but we knew our boys. We knew our boys' friends. They were at home. They were safe. You know, the number of conversations that I or my wife had with our son's friends. Like, we always wanted that to be the place where everybody could hang out, everybody could feel safe, everybody could be celebrated. And it's amazing. We always knew where they were because most of the time they were in our basement, right? And it's a beautiful thing. It was an expensive thing and so worth it. But what I love about what you're saying about your parents is they did that, but they also expanded it out to say, all right, you know, who are you hanging out with? Who are the parents of the kids you're hanging out with? But within that, they were also still giving you choice.
Yes.
Right? They weren't being controlling. They were being intentional, and they were still giving you room, right? You still got to choose. So I love that. But I know, like, early on, you started to have entrepreneurial endeavors at an early age with
Student Painters, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I would speak to this in a couple ways. I mean, one, you said it's expensive. Well, it's a whole lot cheaper than rehab. It's it's a lot cheaper than jail. It's a lot cheaper than the hospital. But like, so I mean, I think that's an interesting thing. Is a lot of people, they try to save money and they end up, it's the most expensive decision they make, whether it's with your kids, with your business, with wherever your friends. But then to your point, so early on I started, I ran a business in high school. So I was, kind of hanging out with some people who were at least a little bit into that. And then College Pro Painters is one that's that's the brand that most people know. I work with a company called Student Painters. And so that was the first time where I went to college and I said, I went to college to learn how to become an entrepreneur and business owner. I realized I'm learning how to run a business from professors who have never run a business. Yeah. That didn't make sense, so I decided to drop out. But before I dropped out, I got involved in this organization, Student Painters. That's what gave me the confidence to actually do it. Yeah. And so I think there was kind of this weird thing that happened where I finally felt like I was around people who were like me, and I'd been misunderstood my whole life within this entrepreneurial area. And I really wanted to do that. And now there were finally people who could challenge me, encourage me, and hold me accountable. And so I think it's one of those things where once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that really changed the trajectory. So I think when it comes to friendships, my encouragement for people is you got to know when to reset, and and then you got to know when to dig deeper.
Yeah.
And so reset, you're the average of the 5 people. So sometimes you need to level up your friend group, but then sometimes you just need to dig deeper with people who are ride or die with you.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think is kind of interesting is I've moved around a bunch of places and created a bunch of these friend groups, but then I've got my friends from high school who are ride or die,
right?
Who, I'm headed this week to go to South Carolina to have, holiday festivities with my friends and with my family. And those are my ride or die friends. And that's an interesting thing that happened there, which I didn't think would happen, but ultimately happened. And maybe this is encouragement for folks is, a lot of those guys weren't super entrepreneurial. I'm from a small town. Like, you're just kind of doing what you do. And so by society's standards, they'd say, all right, cool, cut those friends loose because you need to level up.
Right.
And you need to get with entrepreneurs. You need to get with, and sure, in some ways I did a lot of that stuff. I'm like, level up, move over here, move over here. But I kept investing in those friendships, and then a funny thing happened. They started getting interested, right? And I'll never forget when one of my friends, they came out to San Francisco for a bachelor party or something, and then they saw the lifestyle that I created. And it's like the light bulb finally came on. Because they said, this dude, if he can do
What's
it,
happening?
like
Yeah.
he came from the same school that I came from, he's not smarter than I am, C-level English student, college dropout, ADHD, all the things. If he can do it, maybe I can do that too. And so that was where I noticed the light bulb came on for one of my friends. And then he said, hey, you got any book recommendations? I said, boy, do I ever. And so read this one, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then come back to me when you finish. And he read it. Okay, you got another one. Okay, read this book. And so then their eyes were open. And so that's what I think sometimes is like, okay, you got to get in the room with people who challenge you to be better, but you can also be the light or the lighthouse for other people, kind of each one teach one.
Yep.
And then you level up your whole friend group. And that was contagious. I mean, it just started, that whole friend group starts like, okay, now they're personal development books. Now we're reading. Now we got businesses that we're starting. Now the conversation when I go back home is totally shifted.
Yeah.
And so you have the opportunity to do that for your friends.
I love that. And I can see that with your friend groups. And it's that thing, oftentimes I'll hear people say, well, I need friends that are more encouraging. I need friends that are going to help me and encourage me in this dream. And it's like, okay, well, that is great. Who are you doing that for?
Yes.
Right?
Are you that person?
Yeah. Are you being that person that you want other people to be, right? It's a version of the big dream golden rule, right? Of being able to say, okay, who are you setting this example for? Who are you asking about their dreams and goals? Who are you, like, again, cultivating those things with you, which is huge. Now, if you don't follow Chandler and all the things that he's doing on social media and YouTube and all that stuff, we'll put those links in. Start doing it. Because you open up the toolbox and you are teaching on these things. And one of the things you talk about, whether it's friend groups, peer groups, whatever, you talk about watching out for the energy vampires and the people that drain you, right? So you talked about that, cultivating those relationships, building those friendships, investing in those friends, but there is some pruning that needs to happen from time to time. What's one quick strategy that you recommend when somebody's thinking about their friend group, those people that they want to keep ride or die, but I'm guessing as we hear that, maybe some people are like, but I still got that one guy, or I feel slimed after we hang out. If we go grab a beer or coffee, I walk away just feeling lower energy, worn out, beat up. What's your idea there, especially with friends?
You got to audit your friend group. And I remember this principle from Adam Carroll. He said there's 4 types of people. There's adders, subtractors, multipliers, and dividers. So adders add to your life, multipliers multiply, they're introducing you to people, whatever. Subtractors are the energy vampires. They're always watching the news, obsessing over stuff they can't control, or you leave hanging out with them, you feel like you need a bath or you need a nap.
Exactly, sometimes both.
Yeah, sometimes both. Or they're dividers. And so you either got to do one of 2 things. You either cut them off or limit your time. Or I guess there's a third, which is you reframe the relationship. So if it's beyond repair and they're not going to change, which most people don't, well then, hey, we're not going to be friends anymore if you're a divider. Especially, you can't change someone who's just a divider, who's constantly out to undercut your success. you're gone.
Yep.
Do not pass go, do not collect $200, you're out. And then there's, okay, maybe you need to limit your time. Maybe it's family. So you gotta say, hey, we're just gonna spend less time together. Or maybe you gotta reframe the relationship. And this is, I've had to do this with multiple people in my life, including my own mom, which was a weird thing. And I would never forget, I would come home from, college or running my business, and I'd come home and she's like, you never come home, just like complaining and kind of nagging me about all this stuff. And then finally, I just had to one day, I said, hey, if you want me to come home more, this is not a winning strategy. This is in fact actually why I don't come home more often. So you got, two choices basically. You keep doing what you're doing and I'm not gonna come home that often, or we can change the way that this is happening and it's gonna be a way more positive, life-giving thing. And then of course, it's gonna be better for both of us. It's gonna be way better for both of us, but it's your decision. So you give them the power to change. And she changed. I mean, she was just repeating what was modeled for her. It's that's the same thing my grandma did, right? And so, but you get the opportunity to reframe the relationship. I think Grant Cardone calls it a no complaining zone, and you put up a physical sign. Yeah. So that's what sometimes people would say. They're quick to cut off, or they're quick to accept that this is never going to change, when there's a third option, and that's that you can just reframe the relationship.
Yeah, and kind of hold that relationship as capable of change, and then to be able to say, hey, this is what change needs to look like. And to be able to have that hard conversation, there's a lot of freedom in that. I always, with our boys, I say this all the time, that hard conversations are hard in the minute, but make for a lifetime of change, right? And it's that thing of, it's amazing when someone is willing to have that hard conversation, that is a life-changing thing. So I love it. All right, so we're talking friends. Now let's talk our next word, which is mentors. And you truly are one of the people that's been the most intentional with choosing and pursuing mentor relationships. When did that start to become important for you?
I think it started becoming important when I realized that was the only way I was going to learn what I needed to learn. Yeah. Because if I'm not learning it in college, or if I'm not learning it in school because those people haven't done what I want to do, well then I need to find someone who's done what I need to do, or who's done what I want. And so that's when I started kind of figuring out that I am a show don't tell kind of person. I just show it to me and then I'll understand it. If I don't see it, if I can't visualize it, it's really hard for me to figure it out. So the best way to visualize it is to find someone who's done it, and then preferably 2 steps ahead of you, not 20 steps, right? I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, and that I made early on, is you find the person 20 steps ahead, and then you ask them about your problem that's 2 steps ahead of you, and they have no idea. Because it's so far in the past for them. Right. They're like, I don't know, I forget. Ask someone on my team.
Or they answer the question from where they're at as opposed to where you're at. And I think that's absolutely huge, right? And you talk about kind of just-in-time learning. I know that's such a big thing for you to be able to say, hey, it's great to understand 20 years down the road, but let's get to the next 2 minutes and get the right solutions. And you have been wildly intentional about finding ways to get in the room with these people. Now, I know you talk about a $15 mentor is a great place to start. Talk to us about that.
$15 mentor is my favorite mentor. It's books. It's the smartest, most successful people on the planet have taken the best things that they know and crystallized them into a book. And then all we have to do is spend $15 and a handful of hours, and we can learn the best things that they know. Yeah. So the ultimate mentor and the ultimate cheat code for me in growing my business is figure out what the biggest problem in my life or in my business is, find the best book on that subject, read the book, and then implement the book, and then just keep repeating it.
Right? It's amazing.
And it's amazing what happens.
Yep. And the implementation part is the huge part. A lot of people get the conceptual and say, oh my gosh, I'm so going to do this someday. But you are one to say, no, I'm going to do it today. And sometimes those experiments I know went really well. Sometimes they went, down in flames, but you were always learning. So $15 mentor is a great place to start. And it's oftentimes where people just, say, it won't happen for me. But it really can be that simple first step. But you go further than that. Now, initially, like you said, you dropped out of college because you had success in entrepreneurism. You published a book and it did really well in the first month. I know for you, it was like, hey, wait a second, I could either wait a couple of years and do this down the road, or I can just start my business right now. But then you said, okay, who can I learn from? And initially you were making money, but not a lot of money. So you had to figure out how to get in the room with people where you couldn't necessarily pay them for that time. What were some of the ways? Like, I remember showing up at a Hal Elrod event, and I'll never forget, I'd flown out to California and I didn't know you were gonna be there, but all of a sudden you popped in the room, like, Chandler, what are you doing here, man? You're like, I didn't have the money to get in, I didn't have money to buy a ticket, but I volunteered, and you were hoofing books, you were schlepping tickets, you were doing everything you could to just get in that space. And then I love, you probably remember, but they had a gap. One speaker was late, something else happened in the agenda, and they needed somebody to just take the stage for 5 minutes, and Chandler Bolt jumps up on that stage and freaking owns that room. Everybody's like, who is this guy? How do I buy his book? And you're just like, hey, you just showed up, you filled that void, and man, I think it was the picture of the future. But again, you figured out a way to get in that room. When did you start doing that? How did you start giving yourself permission to do that? Because I think a lot of people will say, I'll wait to get my mentor until I can pay them to do it, or I can, I can afford that kind of help. And I know you pay for that kind of help now, but like, what was that switch for you to be able to say, hey, I'm gonna find a way to get in the room?
I'll never forget the first time I heard of a conference that I wanted to attend, and I realized I didn't have the money. I dropped out of school, and I'm operating like I'm still in school, but just my mechanism of learning is now books, conferences, et cetera. And there was this conference called Mastermind Talks with Jason Gaynard. It was $5,000. And to me, I mean, $5,000, I think I dropped out of school. I had $3,000, maybe $5,000 in my bank account. Rent in Des Moines, Iowa, for me was like $400 a month. And so I'm like, all right, $400 a month. I got about 3 to 6 months of runway.
Right.
$5,000, that's my whole runway. And so there's no way I'm gonna be able to afford to get there, but then how can I at least get in the room? And so I hit up Jason. I said, hey, I'll run the mics, I'll sweep the floors, I'll pick up speakers from the airport, like I'll do whatever you need me to do. I just wanna be in the room. He said, all right, you can come. And so that I did that, and I realized it was this weird thing that happened. The attendees viewed me as Jason's right-hand guy. So I automatically had really elevated status,
right?
Unintentionally. But I, as my mom would say, don't get too big for your britches. Like I was not. I was. They always talk about. My parents always talk about bloom where you're planted. So what's the opportunity that you're doing? Is it running the mics? Is it sweeping the floors? Well, do the best. Be the best floor sweeper that's ever existed.
Yep.
So I mean, I remember literally running the mics. I mean, people would have a question. I'm sprinting. I'm sweating. I'm like, but people are like, who is that kid? I want to spend time with him. And so then the happy hour rolls around. I'm not even old enough to drink, but they're wanting me to come up to the bar and buy me a drink or whatever, talking to me, saying, hey kid, what are you working on? How can I help? Because they saw the way that I was treating that opportunity. And so I did that there. I did that with a guy named Brian Kurtz, the Titans of Direct Response, met a ton of people. I did that in Hal Elrod's event, and I look back at that, and that first volunteer event, I mean, I met so many people. I met Dan Martell for the first time. That sparked a lifelong friendship. I met Hal Elrod. He was the biggest promoter and still is the biggest promoter that we've ever had in selfpublishing.com history. I met James Clear. I met Ryan Holiday. I can point back to that event, and it all started because I got in the room and volunteered my time and effort, and then I bloomed where I was planted.
Which I love that approach. That approach does take a certain amount of humility to be able to say, hey, how can I serve, right? But what I love about that too is that got you inside, because you did. Like I think when I saw you for the first time at Hal's event, you were like dripping in sweat, because I don't know if you remember, but he promised to give everyone at that conference 10 copies of his book. And so he had like brought his minivan. I think he broke the suspension of his minivan because he had cases of books. So you're like schlepping books and all of that. But you showed up, you delivered, and you made yourself valuable, and that does it. And it got you in the room, and it's amazing to think about those lifelong friendships now, where those people where you served them are now peers, right? Like you're now spending time with them and bringing them value in new ways. And
I think, sorry, just to interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
I think like it's not just about getting in the room. It's about what you do when you're in it.
Yeah.
And so there were other volunteers, but I stood out at a totally different level because of the way that I treated that opportunity. Like, I'll never forget, I show up for the volunteer thing, and I realized pretty quickly most of these people are doing the minimum volunteering they can so that they can get in the room and watch the sessions.
Yep.
And that was very tempting because I'm like,
Right.
well, that's kind of what I want too. I want to get in the room and watch the sessions because that's why I'm here. But I kind of just took stock and I'm like, that's a losing strategy.
Yeah.
He didn't bring me here to just watch the sessions. I am not fulfilling on my agreement with him if I do that. So let me instead work my ass off. And in doing that, people are going to notice.
Yep.
Now, and I'm going to get to be in the room and I'll see the sessions and whatever, but I'm going to work my ass off. And if I do, people will notice. So I think that's a really important point to emphasize for folks. It's not just about getting in the room. It's about what do you do when you're in it and do you maximize the opportunities?
I love that.
And then just taking a step back, maybe a framework that would be helpful for people with mentorship is I think when it comes to investing in mentorship, there's a sliding scale. And it's from free to a lot of money. And free is YouTube videos like this or my YouTube channel. Then there's the $15 mentor. We already talked about that. Then there's volunteering for a conference, which maybe you're covering like gas and travel costs or whatever else. And then as you kind of alluded to, the more successful you get, well then now there's a spectrum of time versus money. Are you going to spend time to save money or are you going to spend money to save time? And then that's where, I've paid people tens of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Some of my best mentors and best coaches, and it's the best money I ever spent. And so maybe if we slide all the way to this end of the spectrum, I think strategic mentorship or getting in the room with people, the story I would share there is, you got to identify who is the person, and then you got to be very strategic about getting in front of them. So for me, early on, that was a guy named Michael Hyatt.
Yep.
And so I realized, okay, Michael, I want to be a well-rounded person and not just succeed in business. So he's been married for 40 years, I think, at this point, maybe more than that. Sorry, Michael, if I'm overestimating your years married.
We'll just say it's an honoring amount of time. Yeah.
A long time. He's a seasoned man.
Yes.
So he's been married for a really long time. He's got a bunch of kids who love him.
Yep.
He's strong in his
Who actually come home, right? Like, yeah,
who work at his
absolutely.
companies.
Yep.
He's deeply rooted in his faith. He's ran one of the most profitable publishing businesses in the U.S. and in the world.
Yep.
And then he built a multiple 8-figure online education business. So if I'm thinking, okay, I'm in the publishing business, faith is important to me, my family and relationship is important to me, and I don't want to get there and realize that I've been divorced 5 times. And so I think you got to contextualize. You either got to choose mentors who have succeeded in all the facets that you want to succeed in, or you got to contextualize the advice.
Yeah.
And so I think, if you're taking advice from the person who's been divorced 5 times and who their kids hate them and their personal life's a wreck and their health sucks, okay, well, I'm going to take advice from you in a very narrow window, which is maybe your business acumen, but I'm going to really take the other stuff with a grain of salt. Or you can find someone like I did with Michael, but then how do you get this guy to mentor you? So I said, well, the easiest way is to pay to get in the room and to get some face time. And I remember one of his guys on my team was like, Michael's doing for the first time ever this business accelerator. And he's like, it's 10 grand. I'm like, okay, I'm not super interested, but is it going to be in the room with Michael? And he's like, yes. And there's all these other things. There's these group calls. There's these. I'm like, is it going to be in the room with Michael? He's like, yes, you're going to meet with him 4 times a year. I'm like, how do I pay you? It was the fastest, easiest sales call he's ever had.
Take
probably.
my money.
Because I'm like, hey, okay, that's all I need to know. And then I did that for multiple years, and I got in the room. And then again, we're going back to what we talked about earlier. It's not just about getting in the room, it's about what you do when you're in the room.
Yep.
So I was in the front of the room. I'm taking notes every session. I'm coming back to the next session saying, hey, I implemented that thing. Here's what it did. I'm giving him shout outs, giving him testimonials. And then finally the time came where he said, he announced our business accelerator. He says, I'm retiring as CEO of Michael Hyatt and Company or Full Focus. And I'm promoting a CEO and I'm going to go to the board. And what I heard is I'm about to have a lot more time on my hands. So I said, hey, what are you doing for breakfast tomorrow morning? Let's grab breakfast. And he said, yes. Now, he would have never said yes to that if I would have just asked early on, but I continued to pay to get in the room. And I was the type of person who really the question you're trying to answer for people who you want to mentor you is this a good use of my time? Yep. And I had answered that by consistently making it a good use of his time. And so we went to breakfast the next morning, and I'm ready to go. I've got, I think, a Google Doc or something. Or no, I don't think I had the Google Doc at that point. But I said, hey, I heard you're retiring. Congratulations. Great news. I think that means you're going to have a lot more time. I would like you to be my mentor. Here's what I think that could look like. Are you open to it? And I'm like, here's why it would be really beneficial for you. It's going to be a part of your legacy. You're going to be able to tell people, like, I helped coach that guy. Like, here's why I think it's going to be a big win for you. And also, I want to make it a financial win for you. Are you open to it? He said, yes, send me the proposal. And so I created the whole Google Doc.
I love this. This is a reverse proposal, right? Normally, it's the coach mentor selling their time. You're like, here's how I want to buy your time.
I'm like, this is it. And I record this whole video. I'm like, this is why this is going to make a lot of sense for you. This is why it makes financial sense. This is why this is going to be part of your legacy. And I pitched him on it. He said yes. And so then I kind of created this version of, we would do weekly or bi-weekly coaching calls. Quarterly, I'd fly up to Nashville and I'd say, I'm going to treat it like a board meeting. And we did that for years. And it was wildly successful and very life-giving for both of us. And then now we go on a fly fishing trip every year and it's a great time. But it's like, it's a really long story, but it just shows the through line of, okay, it starts with, I'm identifying the person. Now, how do I get in the room? Now, how do I show up well once I'm in the room? Now, how do I make it a win for them? And then even, fast forward, like, how do you make it a good use of their time? I mean, I remember we do these quarterly meetings and I'd show up, fly up to Nashville, and I've got a PowerPoint, and the first slide every time I'm like, welcome to the half day, Michael Hyatt and Chandler Bolt's half day that's going to change generations to come. And I'm like, painting the vision, and I go through, hey, here's the problems in my business. Here's what we're going through. I treat it like a board meeting. And then one day he's finally like, you're the only, like, he started getting other people into the structure, and he got like 5 or 10 people. He's like, that you're the only one that does this, right? And I'm like, no, I thought everybody did. Like, why would I show up unprepared?
Right.
That'd be a waste of your time. And I'm trying to get a lot out of this and make this worth your time. Why would I do that? And he said, well, can you send that PowerPoint to all these other people? Because I want them to
show them how to be mentees, right?
Yeah. Sorry, it's a super long story.
But what I love about that is there's so much to that, being intentional with who you pursue, who you engage with, honoring them in the process, bringing your best, all those things. But I think there's also one more through line that I think is so important to mention, especially with mentors, is that I think a lot of times when people are thinking mentor, they kind of think of it as a transactional relationship. Kind of like, what can I get from that person? Whether it's, what can I get for a cup of coffee and an hour of their time, to what can I get for $10,000, if I invest in this thing? And you are always wanting to maximize the time, but you're also always building the relationship. And that's why I think so many of your mentors wind up becoming friends with you, as well as you are honoring what they know and what they bring to the table as their mentor, but also you are honoring the relationship. You are building the connection. It's not transactional for you. You are thinking legacy. Like, you want to go all the way. And I mean, it's amazing the number of relationships you have like that now, right? Those people that were the far off mentor, maybe someday I could have a relationship to, now they're fast friends with you. You're spending time with them. You're going fly fishing. You're going to Canada. You're doing these things, and it's amazing. And I think that is huge. Like, if you only get one thing about mentors, treat them like humans and build relationships, right? Honor that. So
when I would add one quick thing to that, which would be become their best student and their biggest testimonial.
Yeah.
And that's I found that so many people, when they get a mentor, they learn all the best stuff from them, then they never attribute them. And oftentimes they'll even just try to act like it's their own stuff, which is so stupid. It's attribute the success. And my goal is to be the opposite of that, be their biggest success story, their best student, and their best testimonial, because then guess what? They're just going to keep shouting you out.
Right.
Right? And they're going to keep investing into that relationship. And so I think Pete Vargas, great example of this. I probably ended up paying him 30 or 50 grand to learn how to speak and sell at stages. And then we implemented it the first year that we started speaking. We did $1 million from stages. And so I did this big shout out post on Facebook. And I'm like, hey, here's how we did $1 million in stages, blah, blah, blah. And now this is the part where I could just pretend like it was all me. But I said, no, this wouldn't have never happened without Pete Vargas, this framework, blah, blah, blah. I give him a huge shout out. And then for years, maybe even still to this day, that screenshot is in every presentation that he gives. He's going to speak at Grant Cardone's 10X conference. I got people sending me pictures because they're like, hey, you're getting a shout.
You're in here, yeah.
You only do that when you become their biggest success story and attribute them and shout them out kind of in the process.
I love that. This is what I'm talking about. We could talk for 4 hours just on that alone, but we're going to move into that next group, which is peers. And you might think, like, as you listen to this, you might think, well, how are peers different than friends? But in your case, you have been very intentional with surrounding yourself with peers, so much so that you actually set up living environments to surround yourself. So talk to us about this concept of an entrepreneur house. And how did you do that? Why did you do that?
Well, it started when I moved to Iowa,
Yep.
And then I moved into the entrepreneur house with Dane Maxwell and some of those other guys. I saw the concept. I said, this is incredible. Then I moved to San Diego. I said, I'm going to start this entrepreneur house. And I basically, Jim Rohn, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So I said, how do I surround myself with 4 other people who are going to challenge me on all facets of life?
And I just want to take a break here. Like, you moved to San Diego, you're pursuing the dream, you're building the business. You could just look at living situation as just one logistic to take care of. Like, that's what a lot of people do. They're saying, hey, I'm going to try to find 4 other people that can pay rent. I might see them in the kitchen once in a while, right? But you said, what if I got intentional with surrounding myself with other people doing similar things and we were all in one house?
Exactly. Well, and I said, well, let's find someone who's really good at business. Let's find someone who's really good in their faith, really good in their health, so kind of wheel of life. Then let's get these people in one environment. And then I pitched the vision, and it didn't work for a long time. I mean, I moved in with one guy, and then we're in there for 6 months, and all the while I'm like, I got to create this entrepreneurship house. I got to create this entrepreneur house. And I kept coming back to that. And it was a chicken and the egg, though. It's like, well, you got to have the place, but you can't get the place until you get the people. And so you kind of got to get the people first. But if you don't have the place, how do you? And so then finally, I just put my foot in the sand. I said, I'm going to sell the vision. So I'm getting on phone calls. I'm like, hey, we got this mansion.
It's going to be amazing.
We're going to have a chef.
So sexy.
There's going to be masterminds and all this stuff. And I would pitch it. And then finally, I got my first yes. And I'm like, all right, well, we're going to be moving in like in the next couple months.
And you didn't have a place.
Do you know anyone else? We're getting a couple more people. And then finally, then it was like, all right, now we got the people. And I had them all put down a deposit because I realized people I'd tried it before and people would just flake out. So I'm like, all right, $500, non-refundable. You're in. And so then we did that. Then I found the place, then put it together. And then it was great people. We had a great environment. We hired a chef to cook the meals. We did a mastermind every Monday where we would kind of rip. I mean, those masterminds were brutal. You showing up to the Monday night mastermind, you got your goals on the wall. It's on the whiteboard, and it's, hey, did you hit them? And what's going on? And I mean, those would just be really kind of sometimes some knockdown drag outs, and sometimes just like a love fest because somebody's really going through it. Right. And they're like, we need to build this guy up. Like, he's about to quit.
He's just a puddle on the floor with his eyeballs sticking out. Yeah.
Exactly. So that Entrepreneur House was a first crack at kind of creating that peer group. And then I think whether it's masterminds, whether it's other stuff, just trying to get in the room with people who are doing things that you want to do. Yeah. And then I got one other tip I could share, but it's kind of on this mastermind dinner concept.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go there because that's again, it's such an incredible illustration of your commitment with intentionality to say, hey, I want to surround myself with people who are doing something similar, that we can encourage each other, push each other, stretch each other, all those things. But I know some Dream Think Doers are listening and going, have a spouse, have kids. That'd be a little awkward to have 4 other people going after the same dream move in our house, right? So that's not always a possibility, but it is, like, that model's not always a possibility. But there are other models to do that. So I'm a big fan of that mastermind model as well. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 things that are applicable for everyone, especially if you can't move into an entrepreneur house. There's peer groups and there's mastermind dinners. So peer groups, that's the EOs of the world, entrepreneur organization, Vistage, whatever. It's speakers groups, right? Toastmasters, getting in a peer group with people who can challenge you and help you learn in a specific way. And then the group dinners, that is a big thing that I've done. And so I would divide those into two camps. There's either city-based or event-based. So especially early on, I've gotten away from this, I need to get back to it, but is if I'm coming into a city, I'm hosting a dinner with the best people that I know in that city. If I'm showing up to an event, I'm gonna host my own dinner and pull the best people from that event. We're all in there for one reason, learning and making friendships, so let me do that. So that's event-based or city-specific.
I love that. And you're talking about, like, you host your own events with self-publishing, but like you're talking about if you go to somebody else's event, whether you're speaking or you're just going to attend, you might throw a shout out to people either personally on email or whatever social media saying, hey, let's get together. We're all going to be at this conference together. Let's use that as the excuse to get around a table and break some bread and follow up with each other, encourage each other, all of that.
When I think it's, let's say there's a few different use cases for that. Sometimes they'll send out the attendee list. So then perfect, find the people you want and just reach out and say, hey, I'm hosting a dinner on this night with some of the top people from the conference. We only have 8 slots. You're one of the first people that I thought of. Are you interested? And then you kind of create some scarcity and some urgency and you get those people. Or maybe you're a speaker at that event and so you say, hey, I'm hosting a speaker dinner. It's not my conference. It doesn't mean I can't host a speaker dinner. Like I'm doing a dinner with all the speakers. And so you can do that. To your point, I'll just post on social like, hey, anyone know anyone that I should know coming to this event? And then I get kind of the crowdsourced. And then I'll pick the ones from there that I want to come to dinner with me. So I'm not like, hey, open invite for dinner. I'm like, I want to be selective with it. So there's that. But then there's this other concept that I love, which is topical mastermind dinners. So this is applicable for anyone, any place, anywhere, any network. I pick a topic that I want to get better at. So for me recently, this was commercial real estate investing. And then I went to friends and I said, who are the smartest people that you know in commercial real estate investing? Or sometimes I'll find a pillar person in that, like I'll find someone smart and I'll say, hey, I'd love to co-host a dinner with you. I'll take care of all the logistics. You need to invite 3 people. And so I'll invite and get the smartest, most successful people on commercial real estate investing. I'll cater it. Chipotle, it's like $100, and then I will just facilitate. And then I'm the dumbest person in the room, and I tell them that right away. I'm like, hey, you guys are all here because you're great at commercial real estate investing. I'm here because I want to learn. You're going to learn from each other, and I just facilitate it. Everyone loves it. They make relationships. They learn a lot, build connections, and then I learn a ton in that area. So I love that as kind of a cheat code for peer-based topical learning.
And what I love about that is, like, I love that as a topic, as an example, because I think a lot of people think that they got to bring value from their knowledge base to something like that. But what you're talking about is you pick areas that you don't have a lot of knowledge in yet, but you're saying, hey, I want knowledge. Who can I connect with? And you give yourself permission to set the stage, make the space, right? To honor others and say, hey, I'd love for you to come. I want to honor your experience, your wisdom, your history. Let's get in the room. Let's bring each other value. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I will buy you a burrito, right? But I mean, what I love is you're giving yourself permission to create that space. And I think a lot of people, they're like, if I'm not the smartest person in the room, I don't know that I want to be in the room. And you're saying, flip that. Say, hey, if you are the smartest person in the room, find a new room. And you're again, intentionally creating these spaces. So, all right. God bless it, man. I love it. So we got friends, we got mentors, we got peers. Now let's talk team. Because as I get to come to the office and I get to hang with you and your team, what I love is, like, you literally could probably power Austin off the energy in this office. Like, you've got remote team, you've got people that are here, but like, you guys are killing it. And it's amazing how encouraging and supportive it is, but it's also database. Like, there are screens everywhere that are showing hard numbers, specifics of the things that, like, everybody's clear on what they're working on. I just sat in on a team meeting where everybody said, hey, this is my thing today. This is the thing I'm getting done, right? So it's tactical, but it's also inspiring. It's all of that. So when you think about friends, when you think about the mentors, when you think about your peer groups, all of that, in many ways it leads up to what you're now creating with your team. So when you think about your team, what are you finding, especially as you've been building this over the years, what are some of those most important pillars for you?
I mean, Bo Schembechler says the team, the team, the team. I mean, it's all about the team. It's all about the team. I mean, if you find any high performance organization, you're going to typically find two things: a great leader and a great team. So whether it's a church that's growing like crazy, Boy Scout troop that's thriving, a city that's thriving, or an business organization, there's usually you'll find a good leader and you'll find a good team. And I think as a leader, you're only as good as your team. And so then a question that I've been obsessed with is, how do we create a team that is the highest performance possible team, but also a team that has great culture and has fun? And those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. Yeah. And so I think for me, it's the most important thing. And so it starts with hiring. And so we've gotten really, really good at hiring, really, really good at hiring. And we're very intense about it, which is not for most people. And so this is what blows me away is people, they'll shortcut the hiring process and they'll think, oh, I don't have time to do 4 interviews with my top candidates. It's like, well, you know what's you certainly don't have time for spending thousands of hours with someone who sucks.
Yep, right? Or who's going to leave. Or, those kinds of things.
Totally,
Absolutely.
Totally. So you got to really invest to make sure that you can find the best people, and that's where we've gotten really good at hiring. Yeah. And then, you got to have an environment where they have fun, they work hard, they play hard, but it's a high performance environment. So that's what we try to create.
Well, what I love is I'm not surprised by it, but like within the first 45 minutes of just walking around, some people knew who I was, some people didn't, so I just kind of walked around like a ninja. And I got to see like salespeople, newer salespeople, working with seasoned salespeople, having strategy conversations and like, hey, you're gonna do it, you're gonna hit it, like, encouraging, but also like, hey, here's my toolbox. Like I just overheard that call. Like literally I heard one of your seasoned people saying, hey, I just heard the call. One thing you might want to try, and you could tell the person was like, yes, please, thank you, right? Like it was organically happening. It was safe, it was encouraging, it was amazing. So I love that DNA. I'm not surprised by it, but it's rare. Like I get to go with speaking and consulting and coaching. You get to go to a lot of environments. And sometimes I go and it's like, whoa, this is gonna be some heavy lifting changing this DNA, right? But here it's like, oh my gosh, I'm walking away energized. So I love that. I will say, and I think I've told you, but like years ago when your team was, infinitely smaller and you were just getting started, you posted one day on I think it was a loose leaf sheet of paper you ripped out of a spiral notebook, 59-cent spiral notebook from Walgreens. They're like, hey guys, these are 5 goals that I'm going to accomplish this month. Written in hand, and you put the little to-do boxes next to each one. You're like, I'm going to get this done. And I'm like, he's nuts. Chandler's lost it. Like, putting it out to the world. And you're like, hold me accountable to this, and I will the last day of the month. I will post which of these I get to check off. And I'm like, you're nuts, man. Don't do that, right? And you started to do it, right? And it was one of those things. And you also, what I loved was, there were months where you're like, of these 5, I got 1 done. And then there were other months where it's like, of these 6, I got all 6 done. Boom, And I come in here and years later, millions in revenue, a major team, amazing rock stars doing this. And I go in your boardroom and there is a beautifully printed version of what you used to put on, again, a notebook piece of paper from Walgreens. Now it's printed up. Everybody's clear. It's not just your goals. It's the organization's goals. It's team goals. Like everybody's abundantly clear. What are we working on and why? And I think it's amazing. And what I love is to kind of have a little bit of behind the scenes to go, oh, now it's beautiful. I remember when it was ugly. I remember when it was messy. And to see it now, years later, but that's a part of the intentionality, I think, that you've always put in. It's like, I'll start messy. Let's figure it out as we go. I'm not going to wait till it's pretty. But now it's pretty and profitable, right? But it's amazing to see.
When it's the same process, but at scale. Right. And so one thing that I think, kind of the intentionality behind that for me, and one thing I think about, I remember Vern Harnish talking about at a conference, he said, people are obsessed with sports. Why do you think that is? They go to the games, they cheer on the teams, they're engaged, they're hanging on the edge of their seat. Why? Well, because there's a scoreboard, and there's a score, and there's a game being played. He's like, well, who wrote the rule that said we can't do that in business? We can't make business as fun as a sporting event. He's like, well, what do you need? You need a score, right?
Right.
Those teams are running plays. You probably need plays in your business, but people need to know what the goal is and if they're winning or losing. Yep. And if they don't see that, then how can they get excited about and rally around? So then that's why even as we've created this in-person team, I've tried to say, how do we make sure that everyone always knows the score, instantly know the score, they know the priorities, they know whether we're winning or losing, because then the fun's in the winning.
Yeah.
It's fun to say, we had a green day, and then
Right.
I told you I'll show you later, but you go over to Alexa and you say, hey Alexa, go green. The lights are going green, the music's going off.
Yeah.
People are celebrating, high-fiving, just like you would at a sporting event. It's like we won the day, we won the game. Now we get to play again tomorrow. And so how do you gamify that in the business? That's kind of what I try to think about and instill in so that we're having fun and that we're winning.
And what I love about that is I think a lot of people, that kind of clarity almost feels scary because there's more accountability, or at least the chance for accountability in that clarity, right? But what's exciting about this is to see the score. Everybody was walking around like last night was the last day of the month, last night, right? And I saw someone who had won big. They were high on the board, right? And I saw him come around and literally pat, hug someone who I'm guessing was maybe low on the board, right? He's like, next month's your month, baby. It's you. And you could see, I saw him walk out of the office like, okay, tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah.
Score starts over again. Let's go, right? I think there's people that fear that kind of clarity a little bit because, I don't want to create too much pressure. I don't want to create a competitive environment. It's like, no. How can you make that the game, right? And to fall in love with the process. We were talking about that last night. It's one of those things. It's one thing to fall in love with being in the end zone. It's one thing to fall in love with, scoring the touchdown. But sustainability and scalability is all in falling in love with the game, right? And the process. So I love that. All right. I don't want to end this because we could keep going and I want to, so we're just going to have you come back, set the record for 6 times on Dream, Think, Do. That's what's going to happen next. But as we wrap this up, when you think about whether it's friends, mentors, peers, or team, and you think about that Dream, Think, Do, where it's like, okay, I'm going to level up, I'm going to lean into at least one of these areas, what's one last piece of advice you'd want to give them?
I would say one thing I'm really thinking about right now is how do we make the Venn diagram more like a circle? And because you might be thinking about these things and you might be thinking, I've got my mentors, I've got my peers, I've got my friends, I've got my team, I've got my spouse, I've got my family. These are all independent circles, and maybe the Venn diagram overlaps a little bit. But one thing in this next season of life that I'm really thinking through and trying to construct is how do I make that Venn diagram as much of a circle as possible? And so that means building a team in person in Austin, so that it's like I've got my faith, I've got my family, I've got my business and my community, and how do I push these things together? So it's how do I make it to where people can come by the office or co-work in our space? How do I make it where people I'm investing time and energy with, maybe we go to the same church? How do I make it where we've got a family dinner that we do maybe once a week or once a month, and then, that's for the team every now and then it's in all their family, and then sometimes it's just for our friends. And so that's what I'm really trying to think through is say, all right, time is a scarce resource. We've got all these different areas that we're investing in. Well, if I try to do all of them separately, I'm never going to have time for anything, much less once kids get in the mix, right? I mean, then it'd just be absolutely game over. So this is like, okay, well, how do I do that in a strategic way that is just time efficient, but fun and very life-giving and building community. So I don't know that that's as much of a parting piece of advice as it is maybe a prompt for people to think through, what does that look like for you in your life, in your community, in this season of where you're at right now?
Well, I think you just dropped probably one of the most important strategies in that example, because this is not a fast thing. None of the things we talked about are a fast fix. It's playing the long game. And that's just one last example of you, and in this next season for you, is saying, hey, how can I have more of this crossover and become more of the same thing, right? And what I love about that is, I mean, it's the example of what we've been talking about, is saying, hey, setting up friendships to be lifelong friendships, setting up mentorships to be relationships, not transactional, but connections and lifelong connections, right? To be able to say, all right, peers, building peer groups that are pushing me and that I'm pushing them and encouraging them, and then to have a team that can't freaking wait. Like, I mean, literally getting to talk with team members. I got to stay at your house last night, which was a huge gift. One of your team members like, been to the house yet? Pretty awesome, right? Like, I mean, that's the picture of these circles crossing over. I was like, I don't know how he gets people to leave. He goes, I know, But I mean, that's the picture of these circles starting for you. Like, that's the next season, is how do more of these circles cross over? That's not an overnight thing. That's a commitment. So that's the thing. Dream, think, doer, as you're thinking about this, to be able to ask yourself, all right, I can't do all this. I can't do it all immediately. But when you start to think about the long game, what you want to create, whether it's with your career, your life, all of it, maybe it's like bringing the circles together. But as you think about the things we've talked about, the friendships, the mentorships, the peer groups, your team, what do you want to start with getting more intentional about right now that will pay off, that your future self will thank you for? That's what I want to hear. So throw it in the comments. I can't wait to hear from you. Chandler, brother, thank you so much for this. This is awesome. We're gonna start making this a monthly thing, I think.
This is fun. This is so fun. Yeah, I appreciate you having me back on.
Yep, I love you, brother. Thank you.